You had received a lot of support from your mother, and it's clear the way you speak about her, how central she was to your pursuit of an education, to the kind of things that you've been able to achieve. I think it was around about in 1997, or thereabouts, she passed away, and so did the father of your children. And that kind of network of support that you'd had from those people was now gone. How did you negotiate that as a young professional person who was trying to achieve success in your career, but also be a mother to your children?
Firstly, my mother was part of my domestic support. Whenever I was going to work late, the children didn't feel that they had been neglected if my mother was there. My partner was also extremely supportive. Even though we lived in different towns, he wouldn't mind stepping in whenever there was a school meeting and I couldn't go. And also those meetings where teachers feel that maybe the children have not behaved exactly the way they wanted to. If I felt that this time somebody else needed to hear that, because it makes you feel like you are also part of the wrongdoing, he would go. That did, of course, open a gap. Although I still had my younger sisters, at some stage she could come over and look after the children. She too eventually passed on, and for a long time then I had to depend on myself. My colleagues, we had a very supportive team at the Department of Justice, and depend a lot on my friends. I've got a very strong group of friends that we've been friends for a long time and support each other when we need to step in and go to a school on behalf of each other. We've been able to do that.
Now Justice Edwin Cameron was one of the people who helped you with your kids.
Oh yes, he still remembers one too, because when I was working at Words as a young single mother and my partner not living with us, I used to go to the preschool, collect my son and bring him to university. And of course, if I'm busy with something, he would wander around and they would look after him. And one of the people who used to look after him was Judge Edwin Cameron.
Taking on this job as the public protector in 2009, I mean, you had achieved a lot. You'd been involved in a lot of public civic organizations. When you were offered that position, was it a tough choice for you to make, or did you inevitably did you feel a pull towards doing this job?
It was a tough choice to make, and interestingly, I didn't think I was good enough to take the job. I had been doing the kind of work that is similar to this, not the decision part, but taking up people's complaints against Home Affairs, SASSA, the police, etc., and looking at the law and then finding the right channel to process those complaints.
What I find so interesting about you is that you're involved obviously in some very high profile matters, but the things that you are the most passionate and animated about speaking about are the stories of the little people and the people who come to you looking for help with their IDs or with pension payouts, and the kind of help that you're able to offer them. That seems to be at the core of your passion for this job.
It certainly is. In fact, that's what persuaded me. Instead of only just finding the right channel to process the case, you will now have the power to investigate and make the decision yourself whether the person was wronged or not wronged. When I came into this job, my vision was to make sure that it becomes a door for the Gogo Dlamenis who have been wronged, or we refer to the ultimate complainant, the downtrodden, as Gogo Dlamini, which just means grandmother Dlamini. We didn't want to say Joe Soap. We chose Gogo Dlamini because that would be the most vulnerable and the least knowledgeable about the architecture of our democracy and where to channel their complaints.
When you took this job, did you realize fully the kind of political dimensions of it? Because I remember in 2011, when you were investigating the police's irregular leasing of the Santam building, and the Star released a story about your pending arrest for fraud and corruption, and you had a press conference. And I remember quite powerfully just the sense of you just being so taken aback that this was actually happening. I mean, have you been surprised by some of the things that have happened because of some of the work that you actually do?
My predecessors did tell me that there will be twists and turns. I did not expect some of the things that have happened to me. At some stage I was about to be arrested, it was said, and yes, quite a lot of the things that happened were a bit extreme. You know that there's been personal insults about how I look, how my hair looks. All of those were not really expected.
Why is it when a female person is in a position of authority or in the political landscape, it somehow becomes acceptable to make comments about their appearance?
Sexism is still in the psyche of the average South African. But sexism is in the psyche of women as well. I wasn't the first woman to be insulted. Premier Helen Zille, Minister Nosiviwe, Mapisa Ngqakula, and others had been insulted, and we kept quiet. You know that story about Nazis, that people often say nothing, and when our tolerance for wrongdoing is allowed, it just keeps growing. And I think we reached a point where our tolerance for blatant sexism had grown too far, and the wrongdoers then thought they could just continue to do it.
You wrote a letter to your 17-year-old self, and you spoke in that letter about how as a young woman you hadn't felt very beautiful. And I loved that letter. I loved how you spoke to yourself about, you know, your fears of being unlovable, but being loved and protected all your life. But in light of that sort of early belief about yourself, when people are insulting your appearance and they are making comments like that, how do you emotionally register it? How do you deal with that?
People insult me because they are afraid of me or what I represent. And when people are afraid, they will do anything that they think is going to help them deal with their fears. When it happens, yes, I am saddened by it. I can't lie that I'm not saddened by it, but I'm not devastated, because I'm at a point in my life where I know I am beautiful. I know that actually I was created for a particular purpose, and I'm fit for that purpose. What I would say to every South African is have hope. You have a constitution whose architecture makes it very difficult for us to mess it up.
News that moves. eNCA.com.